Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Thursday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Today is October 27th, a few more days, and we will be in the beginning of November and marching our way towards 2023 before you know it. But before then, we have a World Series to play. So my guys are in there, backed in, all good. Philly special here. We love the Rocky mentality. Everybody's against us. We'll still do it anyway. So that being said, let's do some quick housekeeping and then we'll get into the good stuff. So if you don't follow this podcast, no worries. You can find everything about what we do here at MSP Initiative online at mspinitiative.com under sessions. This session, the one we're on right now, and every past session are recorded and posted online in podcast and video format. So you guys can go and, figure out whether any of this content does anything for you. The big thing that's coming down here is on November 9th, just a couple of weeks from now, on Wednesday night, an international drive in Orlando at Icon Park with the big Ferris wheel. We'll be hosting the MSP Community Block Party, the absolute biggest one we've ever done. We are flying in the All-American Rejects. That's right. You've heard them on the radio forever and ever. We're bringing a live concert to you, the MSP community, for free. Costs you absolutely nothing. You just got to find a way to get there. So if you're in town for other events, no problem. We know what's happening that week. There's a lot of moving parts. No, we're right there in the middle of the week, 9 p.m., Wednesday, November 9th, Icon Park. If you're at some of the, big events in the area, we are running some shuttles around. So we'd love to see you there. But you do have to register. So if you click here, you'll go to a landing page where you can just fill out some information. You'll get a confirmation and a QR code, so that when you get to the front door, you can just zoom on by without sitting there and registering on site. So highly recommend you do that. Last thing that's worth mentioning is our Channel Strong Tour. We have our very last Channel Strong Tour. We've been doing them throughout the entire year, going throughout the whole U.S. here. We had 8 of these scheduled. We're going into number 8. So few weeks after, that November 9th event, we'll be coming to Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, and Georgia. So if you're in any one of those areas, and you have some time, it's usually from 2 to 6. It's MSPs host us in each city. You just literally come out. We usually do these outdoors. We have beer, we have food, we have great conversation, and learn from the people in your area. So definitely come on by. You can click here, register. If you're an MSP, we'd love to see you. Okay. Now, with all of that being said, here we come back, multi-time, MSP Initiative Live guest, Reed Warren from IT Valuations. Reed, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, doing really good. And talking about the big, you guys were at the big with the MSP Initiative. You guys did the boat cruise. That thing totally rocked. That was so awesome. I know everybody that went and attended had a great time, and can hardly wait for the one here at the IT Connect, IT Nation event, because that's going to even be bigger and better. So you guys really know how to host a party, and you do a phenomenal job.
We appreciate that. And trust me, we love throwing parties, although the bigger they get, the more moving parts, but come out some way, we figure it out.
And that's being said by a conservative financial analyst kind of guy who's not a big partier. It was a great party. So there you go.
Show up at the next one, November 9th.
It is. And it's free. Did anybody say that? Free.
I mean, that's the best part. Literally zero. Food, drink, concert. I mean, it's, what do you got to lose? What are you doing on November 9th? Are you doing anything better? I don't think so. Come on down.
No, not in Orlando.
Exactly. So, Reed, the last time we talked, I believe the interest rate was still like 4%.
Yep.
It's completely different now.
It's still climbing. But it was really interesting.
I would think it's going to hit 10% by the end of the year. What do you think?
It might hit by 10% by the end of the year. That said, I don't think it's going to stay there. So okay. I do think, so a couple of things. One, at the big, I had the opportunity to be able to speak about economics and valuations, which was really actually a fun piece, and really got to go back and, for all the concern about, hey, interest rates going up and, oh my gosh, inflation's going up. And, unemployment is, from a technology perspective, is super low. And how do we find people? It was actually really interesting because I went back to a bunch of presentations that I actually did, George, back when you and I got started to meet back in 2017, 18, 2019. And the ironic thing is the interest rates at that time, that was in September, which was only about a month ago, were only about a quarter of a point higher than they were in same time 2019. And the biggest difference, quite candidly, is just inflation is the biggest thing that's actually different than what it was in 2019. So as much as we see this, feel like there's this big surge and it's like, oh my gosh, the world's going to end. I really don't think so. We're just actually coming back to where things were in 2018, 2019 kind of time frame.
I mean, maybe I'm in my baseball mode here, but like, I feel like the momentum in 17, 18, 19 was like this. And I feel like today I'm not getting the same feeling, right?
Yeah.
And you're hearing a lot of check signers, business owners, board people. I mean, I think Microsoft just cut another 1,000 people like a week or two ago. Elon Musk, I think on tomorrow, they're announcing the completion of the sale of Twitter to Elon for some whopping $44 billion. And he's already come out and said he's planning on cutting the headcount by 75%. Like that's big, that's not 10, 20, 30, that's 75%. I understand there's other economics there, but like, it just seems like things are a little bit stalled out.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of things trending that way, but again, we've typically seen, and I hear what you're saying, but we've typically seen a market overreaction. I look back just even to some things that I've talked about. 2018, I wrote a stupid article about how things were going to actually, hey, this was going to be the year of the pullback, and it never pulled back, right? And so I realized there's a lot of those things on the horizon, a lot of those concerns. But I think if there's one thing that we've watched over the economy, particularly since about the 2008 timeframe, is that it's never really, we've had some big events, but it's never been quite as cataclysmic as everybody kind of feared. And the market actually did okay. And I expect particularly, and so I'm not talking about the overall necessarily market in this case, but I think for MSPs out there and technology firms out there, I don't think it's going to be a doomsday by any means. I think we're going to see pullbacks in the market. I do agree with that, but I think it's going to return to normal or more of a normative type numbers, and it's going to be some sort of material pullback. And so when I look at it, I think, yes, we're going to see valuations, the multiples kind of, you're going to say pull back or return to normal. They're going to come back a turn or two. But we've been seeing super inflated, just like the real estate market, we've seen super inflated valuations on businesses through that whole time. I don't think we're going to hit a 2008, like we saw in the real estate market, real pullback where things went inverted and things got ugly. I just think it's going to go, it's going to come from if you were at a 10x, it's going to now be an 8x. Well, it used to be an 8x in 2019. If you were at a 6x today, hey, that used to be a 5x in 2019. Do I think we're going to come back? Yep, I think so. But I don't think it's going to be, for those of you, maybe, I don't know, maybe you remember the dot-com bubble in 99. I don't think it's going to be like that. I just think it's not going to pop. I think it's going to deflate a bit, but it's going to come back to, I think, a pretty, for most MSPs, a pretty steady market. If there's anything that COVID proved for the MSP market, is that MSPs are the bread and butter of American technology. Every business requires it. They need it. They can't shut it off unless they're going out of business. So will you have some attrition due to companies going out of business? Yes. I think the market consolidations are going to continue to stay strong, not only from an MSP roll-up perspective, but we're just seeing across the industry. There's still so much private equity money on the sidelines that are looking to do acquisitions across all industries. So not just technology, but we're seeing hotel roll-ups, we're seeing retail roll-ups, we're seeing dental practice roll-ups, we're seeing accounting roll-ups. I mean, across every industry, we're seeing massive consolidation. And I think it's only going to continue to be driven predominantly because two factors. One, you have an aging population demographic. So most we were talking about this back in 2000 was going to be the first year of this real move where 70% of the businesses in America were going to change hands because of the aging demographics. That got stalled out about a year, I would say a year and a half because of COVID, but it's coming back. People haven't figured out how to stop aging, and so as a result, across all those arenas, we're going to see consolidation, which I think you can look at it one of two things. Hey, that could mean fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which it certainly does, but it also spells opportunity, because if you're an MSP servicing companies, again, hopefully your clients are ones that are doing well. You're going to be a part of that scaling growth, and we've seen a number of our clients over the last year and a half who have just skyrocketed from a revenue perspective, mostly because they've been on the right side of that equation. Their clients are consolidating other companies, and as a result, their business is growing at 10-20%, not really because they figured out how to sell any better, which they need to learn how to do, but because their customers are actually doing consolidations into their organizations. So I think there's opportunity there.
I'm going to ask you a few targeted questions here.
Sure.
So obviously, again, you have customers, you have NDAs, and don't break any of those, but like big picture over the last, I don't know, 6 months, let's call it.
Yep.
What's the typical valuation that you're seeing? And maybe like the valuations tied to a revenue number, if you could give us an idea.
Yeah. And so I would say value is driven by two predominant elements. One, EBITDA, and the second one, growth rate. And so where you see EBITDA in that close to top quartile or 20%, where you see growth rate close to 20%, when you converge those two, we see the best multiples that are being given out. But I would say if we were to go back a year ago, on $1 million in EBITDA, doing just growing with the market at about a 10% growth rate, a year ago I would have said, hey, you were probably at about a 6x multiple at that time for things that were going on. There was rumblings of things going up. By the spring, here in May, we had a transaction that closed. They were $1 million in EBITDA, right around $5 million in revenue. They got a 7x all cash offer. And here, even
cash.
in this,
wow. You see that?
Not often, but the market supported it, right? And the interest rates were low enough and people were trying to get on it beforehand. Today, it's crept up. Yeah, I think in late summer, September, to about maybe a 7.5 is where you could get to on $1 million EBITDA. But I'm starting to see that start to edge down, and I don't have tons of data points on it, but I would just say from the conversations we're having with private equity firms, and what's happening in the marketplace, we're just seeing a reluctance to go back to that 7 to 7.5 on $1 million in EBITDA. Obviously, as the market, I think, is going to stay strong. If you're over 2 million in EBITDA as an MSP, let me back up and say, if you're doing $1 million in EBITDA and you're growing top line at 20%, you're probably going to see an 8x today. I expect that to slightly erode. But when I say erode, you're coming down a turn at that point from a 7x back down to a 6x. I really don't think you're going to fall to a 5x. And as it was interesting, I had Ramsey Shagan with Evergreen. I had that conversation with him in 2018. I was on a panel at IT Nation or IT Connect at that time with him, and we were talking afterwards what he was looking for. At that point, what they were looking for on $1 million EBITDA was 5.5x multiples. And so, we've come a long ways. Since then, it's definitely ticked up. I anticipate that it's going to be eroded back, but I don't really expect it to go back to the fives. I expect $1 million in EBITDA to stay pretty strong in the 6.5 kind of X multiple range. Again, okay. If you have a growth rate on top of it, that's only going to be accelerating that.
So let's flip to the other direction. People who decide, hey, I'm not ready to sell yet. I still got some gas left in the tank, but they want to wrap up 2, 3, 4, maybe even 2 MSPs just coming together. How do the current conditions affect how the percentage breakdown of ownership or how the deal structured? Does that really affect anything?
So a couple of things. Yeah. So I do expect if you're going to move into buy side, I think 2023 is going to be a better year to do acquisitions than 2022 for a couple of different reasons. The con to doing it is, will interest rates be higher? Yes, interest rates are going to be higher. That said, what's so much driving the multiples today is a shortage of sellers. And what I anticipate happening, we're already seeing this in the marketplace. More and more people are coming forward and selling because they haven't figured out how to get younger. They realize it. And we see this also when there's concerns about economic future. People are going like, I don't want to go ride to this, downturn again, so I better sell while I can. So I do anticipate that part of what's going to put cause the erosion on the multiples. It's going to be, hey, we're going to move into a place where rather than being a seller's market, it's more of a normal market. There's more of an equal balance. There's less pent up demand on the buyer side. Buyers can get a little bit more choosy on choosing the right sellers they want to. Again, that's going to continue with some pressure. So if you're on the buy side, I expect that 2023 will be a better year to buy than 2022. I think the other element, on the buy side, is really going to be, taking advantage. I think interest rates are actually going to come back down. That's just the Reed Warren piece to it. We'll see how that goes, because I think it's good. I think there's too much concern about a slowing economy, and I think that in the end, we're not going to have a place where.
But again, I'm not an economist,
right? And neither am I.
Not working for the central bank here, but like, inflation keeps going up at record numbers, and then like interest rates are supposed to help bring that down, right? That's what I understand.
Yep.
It hasn't come down. Inflation's still ridiculously high, like historically. So I gotta think there's a runway here where they're gonna keep trying.
I think you have. I know you don't like to be political, but you have a component that it's not just interest rate; it's exorbitant government spending.
True,
and that can come down with changes in the midterm, and that's normally what occurred. I mean, even to Republican presidents. So this isn't an you look at from Clinton.
But hold on, it's not just that though. We still have this weird supply chain thing happen.
Well, but I think that's part of the reason for the inflation. So you have PPP funding that flooded the marketplace. You have people with cash who now have disposable income. From that perspective, it's been good. You have a supply chain that's been terrible. So you have pent up demand and people are willing to pay premiums for it. And so that's creating part of what's creating an inflationary pressure. It's like, hey, when I can go buy a new car cheaper, and I did buy a new car cheaper than I could buy a 1.5-year old car. Yeah, why wouldn't you do that, right? Now, that said, I don't expect that to stick around. And in as much as there's going to be a raise in interest rates to help curb inflation, I think the inflation, this is a Reed Warren opinion. I'm not an economist, but I tend to align to the fact that it's more of a bubble that's created by surplus income and a shortage of supply, we have high demand, low supply. Therefore, you have that. I think as supply chains iron out and products become more readily available, you're going to see people become more cautious. They're not going to overpay because I don't have to buy now just to be able to get in it. So and I'm not going to jump into the conversation around whether the government's doing that or not doing that by intention or default. I don't know.
I would say that my unscientific approach, I just bought my son a tech car, and there are deals to be made even at that manufacturer, because I just did it, which shows. And as far as the supply chain, I do have a little bit of insight into that. There's just a fear of when things shut down, you need to fund to get them back up running to full speed. There's a little fear in policy versus real pressures. And that's one of the shortages you're having at the ports. And that's and across our energy production. They're more concerned about policy than economic conditions, and that's the holdback. And that's why they're not turning the dial up all the way. And it's like, did any oil leases get canceled? Not really, but it was a prediction of the policy. So I think you have that causing some instability that isn't structurally pressured that you'd normally find in these economics. That's why I think the Fed's wrong, but that'd be a whole other phone call. And by the
way, real quick, Keith, how was your trip over to Florida and back?
Good, except for Uber sucks.
Uh-oh. What happened? I saw you take the limo out.
Yeah, so I went to get their professional, and the guy goes wrong hotel, and they send a car. I go, this is not a luxury car, and it's just not worth it. It's too much stress. I don't know how people do that. Someone just sent me a thing about some deal on Frontier Airline, and I'm going, how do you fly like that? We work too hard, and while we're not all as rich as George, we have some money.
I drive. I take the scooter. I can't afford your limit.
So I had it back to bring me home, and I have it ready for IT Nation.
Good. But how was the event? It's next gen, right?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was a good event. I think they did a good job. Some good sessions. Some people that drink too much, which I always wonder why you do that in a business setting, but that's a different story.
Well, I'll let you know what the bar tab is at the end of the block party.
That's
I'm
right.
No,
gonna
social is fine, but getting drunk to where you're talking stupid is
Yeah.
not. You go
That
like,
doesn't make sense for sure.
especially when you're representing a company.
Of course.
Yeah,
And I would say, don't get drunk when you go in to sign and close on your M&A transaction. I had somebody do that, and actually the buyer walked away at the last minute because the guy showed up drunk and was just a total asshole. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Probably you can bleep that out. But
No bleeping.
like,
we're live. It's all out there. Sorry, buddy.
That's right.
Well, so you know how they say people don't read their contracts. I mean, we heard it back from Big K, right? When they're like, "Oh, but you just never read your contract. That's why you're all mad at us." And I'm like, "No, I read your contract. It just wasn't good." But that being said, you should definitely read the M&A contract, right? I mean,
Well,
you're selling.
yeah,
most of the value in your business only happens when you sell, right? So, like, how would you? Wow.
Well, it wasn't that they hadn't read it. It just they came in late at the game for signing. It was an in-person signing, and just was enough of a jerk that everybody said, I just don't think we want to do this, and just started to spend the money before he got it. So,
wow, there's a way to blow up your own deal, huh? That's crazy.
I do understand. I've been asked, and I'm going like, it's an emotional decision too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's like I started it. It's mine. I don't know if there's anyone that could run it like I do, which isn't true, but you get that feeling internally, like, what's it going to be like in 2 years? And
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
Anyways,
but Reed, back to
this.
So what about merging companies together? Not necessarily buy or sell, but
merging, I think, is going to be the big opportunity, right? So right now with private equity on the sidelines, they're really looking for anything $2 million and over. They do come down to 1 million. About 25% of the market will come down to the 1 million in EBITDA threshold. So where there's big opportunity, because it's interest rates actually don't matter at that point. We'll do valuations on both because interest rates are constant between the two when we're looking at doing a true merge. It's going to be on basically a tax-free method. You're not exchanging. You're not exchanging cash. You're exchanging membership units. As a result, it's not a taxable event, and you're not, because of the exchange, you're typically not borrowing money. So there's not an interest rate impact to that. And I think what we're going to see in 2023 is a lot of the sub 1 million in EBITDA MSPs that are out there are really going to start to look at, hey, growing may be getting tougher because the market may not be quite as hot. So we're going to go, back to 8 to 10% top line growth from a MSP economy perspective. And then from there, it's going to be, how do I get bigger? And in that perspective, I think for a number of things, the risks in the cybersecurity space, risks on a lot of different fronts bigger is going to be better. And I think you're going to see a lot of that 300 to 800,000 in EBITDA MSPs are going to say, we're just going to band together. And we're going to come together, and then we're going to look for some sort of exit event as we get to a material, kind of size that makes us more attractive to a private equity firm or a private equity backed strategic buyer.
Makes a lot of sense. So I would assume, obviously talking a lot of places, peer groups and what have you. A lot of those guys that understand, like, have been growing their businesses, through accountability groups, stuff like that. Those are the guys that seem to be getting together pretty quickly.
Yeah. So if you're in Evolve, or you're a Taylor Business Group, or Gary Pica's True Methods, or Robin Robbins, all of those communities become great communities to be able to do mergers in and acquisitions in. Partly, if you're a part of that group, you're going to find companies of similar culture, similar vibe, that make a lot of sense to do really kind of a strategic merge to be able to do that. And we see peer groups even having, almost every peer group I talk to, it goes, why don't we just merge together? Because we already know each other. We already know we like each other. Why shouldn't we do that? And so I think as there becomes more economic pressure, the merge piece is going to be the way to handle it, because, hey, through a merge, I can accomplish some of the objectives I would normally get through an acquisition. So without costing me money, now with the three of us companies together, we have better utilization rate. We can reduce our overhead. We can become more efficient. We can establish, we're not running everybody at 110% to make everything work. And so it does give you better utilization, better stratification of your delivery teams, and better leverage on your sales teams and other places. And so I do think we're going to see, and I'm expecting in 2023 to see a lot of mergers happening for that reason, or those reasons.
Got it. There we go. I assume you're going to be at IT Nation, yes?
I am going to be at IT Nation. I'm going to be speaking on a panel on Thursday afternoon for sellers. So it's a great panel. You're going to see a number on the M&A track. There's going to be a lot of people, clients, partners, peers, and competitors are all going to be there, but it's a really good opportunity, great opportunity. One of the better opportunities to actually learn what's going on. What do you need to know from an M&A perspective? There'll be sessions before us around buying. There'll be session that I'll be in will be really around the seller and how to get your business ready for sale. But in any of those cases, it's one of the best learning opportunities, I think, in the marketplace today for just learning what do I need to know about mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, 100%. Lisa, I see you're on here. Any tips on things to look out for at IT Nation this year? I assume you're going to be there.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have a couple big announcements that they're going to talk to us about next week. So I think around the security side. So I can't say anything today, but we should have a couple big things. We've got lots of good vendors there. We've got lots of great hosted guests and partners coming. Keith is one of those. So Keith, can't wait to see you again. And yeah, it's also
Keith likes cigars, just so that you know.
Well, I love cigars. I've got a whole pack of cigars back there, so we'll definitely have to smoke some cigars there. The guy from Lion Guard too used to be with ConnectWise. I forget his name now. Engineer, loves cigars. But we're also changing the venue too, from Universal to SeaWorld, so that should be interesting. Hopefully, that's as fun as Universal used to be. So, and again, good times, and look forward to connecting with everybody.
Awesome.
And you look awesome, man.
I literally just went down to the stadium to get all the stuff because it's literally sold out everywhere.
Dude, I'm a diehard Padre fan. I've got season tickets. I've had them since the 80s. And, now that they didn't make it, I'm rooting for you guys. So go win.
At least it's not that ugly green stuff.
Oh, come on.
I can tolerate that.
I mean, Keith, you picked up somebody new this week in Dallas. I picked up somebody new here in Philly. I'd say, everybody's on the buyer's market. The Chiefs just got somebody. I think the Chiefs just picked up a receiver from the Giants. It's all. Everybody's going for shopping now.
Did you get your bottle?
I hear. I'll get it in Florida. It's on the. It's on the trailer that everything else is in.
Yeah, it's.
But now I can drink it with you. How about that?
Yeah, well, I'd like to get your opinion on it because the guy said, "Oh, this is this is better." Quarter horse.
Cool. We'll give it a try. I don't think
it has a nice bottle. I mean, that's how I pick it.
No, hey, I knew you were going to take care of it. I knew you're going to take care of it. I had no fear.
Yeah. So
George,
I'll be doing a fireside chat with Jason Slagle and some other people at IT Nation as well.
Oh, is that right, Keith?
Yeah.
What day is that on?
I think it's on Wednesday. I'm getting all the scheduling things in now, and I get it. If I rely on Sean, you know how ineffective that is. So I go to Lisa.
I don't want to get in the middle of father and son. That's between you two.
Yeah, that's awesome, Keith. I'm glad you got that. I also, the mobile app actually for IT Nation Connect just went out today. So the schedule's in there, guys. Use the mobile app because the website's not updated during the conference. So you want to use the mobile app to set aside all your sessions. Plus, it gives us the opportunity to add more if there's a lot of attendance and people get shut out. So yeah, please get on that today.
Yeah,
that'd be perfect.
I see it right here. IT Nation events.
Yeah, I'm flying in on Friday just to make sure I don't miss anything. So get really
flying out or in?
Flying in.
Oh, so you're coming in like the weekend before IT Nation?
The weekend before.
Okay. I think he's playing golf or something.
No, I actually decided to take enjoy a little bit of Orlando with my wife, and then I'm part of the Evolve days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'll be speaking in 3 different peer groups each of those days before rolling into the IT Connect event, which looking forward to all of it. And we're actually going to be bringing our just making it a team event. So we're actually going to fly our whole team in from IT Valuations. There'll be 10 of us coming in to be a part of that whole event, and we'll all be there at the block party, and just looking forward to not only a great time, but it's just such a great time just to connect with so many of our peers, so many of our clients, and ConnectWise has been just such a great vendor to work with from that perspective. And so it's the place to be.
Busy week. And
That's great,
lots of
John.
money being spent without question.
Yeah, I'm flying in Monday, so I don't know when George is coming in, but
I'll be actually flying in Sunday, and I'll be there till Saturday. So,
well, could you make sure that the bar's ready? We've picked a great cigar smoking zone.
actually, we're gonna have fresh cigars. We're gonna have a cigar stand at the block party just for you.
Wow.
And by the way, I
Are
just
you
got
rolling
back
again?
from the SeaWorld
Yeah.
Hotel. They let you smoke. They have couches right outside the pool gate.
Oh,
So I've got it scoped out, and I have reserved seating.
I've never been to this venue before, so first
Yeah,
time.
you know, it's a hotel's a hotel, but they have a nice pool area and a slide. But they had a couch, 2 L couches right outside the pool with ashtrays set up. Sometimes nowadays they're making you walk 5 miles from the hotel and don't let any smoke blow this way. They were pretty accommodating.
That's good.
Yeah.
So how is the venue going to be? Yeah, but
Walter says Cuba is not so far. You can get some good cigars. Yeah, that's a whole different challenge. As a guy who went to Europe twice in 2 weeks, I went to the UK, I went to Malta, I came back both times. And yes, I did get stopped in security. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, I think that's a whole different challenge there, Walter. That's one for another week. Definitely not that week. Back to you, Reed. Tell us, what should people be doing right now? Should they be piling up their cash, or should they be going somewhere else to see if they can invest it into other companies? Should they be maybe piling it up for an event? How are the banks treating, how the MSPs are doing right now? Because you still got to get financing somewhere. If you have to go borrow money, how are they viewing things?
yeah, so banks have actually been pretty interesting to date. I'm not going to. Yeah, so to date, they've been actually pretty supportive of the whole thing. We've seen banks actually loosening up some of their lending policies. We see some pretty aggressive stances on particularly cash flow lending for private equity firms. So, and if you're thinking about maybe doing your own kind of piece, there are banks that are out there that will lend. It used to be like 3 times trailing 12 months cash flows. We've seen that grow to as high as 5 is not uncommon. I have heard of 7. And so when you think about rolling out and doing acquisitions, of saying, hey, I've got cash on the balance sheet, so I'm going to use 1/3 of my own cash, 1/3 of bank financing, and then 1/3 of seller financing to get a deal done. You now have a way where you can do a pretty highly leveraged transaction fairly affordably to be able to pull off a transaction. Some of that cash flow lending will be interest only for like a 5-year period of the balloon payment. So again, if you're looking at a 5-year time horizon, hey, you're going to pay interest, yes. But here's the thing that most people don't realize when they do that: your debt is treated as a non-multiplied impact. So if I borrow $1 million, I just have to pay back $1 million, right? If I use $1 million to go buy a $5 million firm, as an example, and now that in 3 to 5 years, that $5 million firm is now worth $10 million, hey, I still only pay back $1 million, right? So my debt load as a part of that whole equation actually got smaller when you looked at debt to equity ratio based upon growth. But if I were to say where to put your money today, you need to invest in how to grow your firm, and not just acquisitively, which is great, but really learning how to grow organically at greater than the marketplace. So if the market's growing at 10%, you need to be focused on how do I grow my firm at twice the market rate. That means I've got to figure out sales, I've got to figure out marketing, because that will be the way that you not only take market share, but it will be one of the biggest attractions to any private equity firm or any buyer. Candidly, it's easier to take an MSP and make it profitable than it is to take an MSP and make it grow. And so some of the best firms and some of the highest multiples that we see today are going to firms that have figured out that growth equation. And I would say there's a place to invest. That is the place to invest.
Interesting. I mean, surprising that the banks have really, for for a long while, I don't think they understood the sandbox, right? I think they had a very hard time, excuse me, cost justifying what they were willing to give you in terms of, borrowable money, right? But sounds like it's matured a bit.
No, it has matured. And so when you think about how a lot of the private equity backed firms are doing that, if I do an acquisition and so I use part of that, debt financing to buy more cash flow, then I can actually improve the debt. I can improve my borrowing power because my cash flow improved, right? And so it is, you do have to keep a close eye on it because a lot of people don't improve their cash flow when they do an acquisition. But if you have a good integration team and you're really doing a good job of optimizing it, and again, it starts with, let me start out by saying, the companies that do it well are ones that are already top quartile. And here's the main premise that I hope most people hear, and that is the seller is going to resemble your performance in 12 to 18 months. If you're an average firm, you can buy a top performing firm, and it's going to be an average firm in 12 to 18 months because you don't know how to run your firm any better than average. So if you're really looking to do acquisitions, you need to first of all make sure, and there's a lot of great stuff through Evolve, Service Leadership, in almost every peer group, TVG, Taylor Business Group, that'll help you get to that top quartile state. Once you're there, now you're in a prime spot to go buy average companies or below average companies. And in 12 to 18 months, you're going to transform them to look like you. And you're the one that's going to be able to harvest the upside of that. And so again, if you're saying, hey, I'm having a struggle growing and I'm only doing 7% EBITDA, doing an acquisition is just most likely going to turn somebody more profitable into something less profitable.
Okay. This is important to know. Let's quickly flip over to the SaaS side for like 2 seconds.
Sure.
What are you seeing in software as a service land, since that's valued diametrically opposite from MSP land?
It's hot. If you've got recurring revenue, I mean, SaaS companies that I'm seeing today that are particularly almost all recurring revenue and subscription, we're still seeing really high multiples. Let me just put it that way. And that's just, and why? Because the predictability of the revenue and predictability of the profits. And candidly, every private equity firm wants that. It's the same reason, oddly enough, why storage centers are the most profitable businesses in America and why it's so hard to get into the space, because storage centers have the highest profitability per dollar spent.
You mean like storage centers?
Yeah, like self-storage. It's why? Because there's little overhead. It's all fixed cost. You may have a person, or if it's automated, you have a unusually high. I mean, you're looking at 60+% EBITDA on most of those entities.
Wow, talk about it like a hidden gem that nobody knew about.
So, but the point of saying that is, hey, SaaS companies, you're looking like the same thing. Hey, this looks like a great reoccurring annuity stream. If you've got a great product that's not going to be where there's something, imminent, that was probably the biggest thing. So I know a lot of people trying to get into the space, particularly the cybersecurity space. We're seeing this in cybersecurity. It's really interesting. We end up talking to quite a number of cyber companies that created some cool tools and cool IP. All of them think that they really are onto something that's really unique. And you kind of look at it and go, I know half a dozen other people that are solving the same problem, different tool set, but some of that stuff's going to be challenging. But when you get to a place where you do have a product with a good customer base behind it and a good subscription stream, you are seeing 5, sometimes 7 times revenue multiples on that.
That is interesting because there's I do some work on the legislative side and I do curriculum for the California State Universities, community colleges, and so on. There's such an undescribed liability or possible liability in that space because people are going, back and saying, I paid you to make sure this wouldn't happen. So it's interesting to hear that there's money going that way. I thought there'd be some reservations until the whole liability equation was figured out.
Yeah, there's without a doubt. So SaaS there's a lot of companies that are not making, but even so, we do have, I was did evaluation for a client of ours that has some really cool intellectual property that they've built. But typically, SaaS companies were selling at 2 to 3 times revenue, even when they're unprofitable, which was really blowing my mind because there was a path to profitability and you had a customer base that you could cross-sell, upsell into. And so the transactions that did occur that were reported, the multiples were, surprising, in my opinion, surprisingly high as a valuator. Because the return on investment, though, is not happening through the firm. The return on investment is coming either because I can now scale it at a level that they're currently not scaling, or I can bundle this into another service set that's going to give me the profitability, and I can drive the profitability some other way. So again, the long term on that, we'll see. But I've seen some pretty crazy things this last 6 months in the SaaS space. And I would just say, as you look into more, as you look forward, the desire by private equity for those recurring revenues and recurring profit streams is only going to go into higher demand as the market becomes increasingly unstable.
Okay, so let's go one step above. A lot of people said that they were exploring IPOs, and now they're like totally on hold, right? Because the market went craziness. So do you suspect that if somebody was looking to go IPO, obviously, whether it's a private equity firm trying to cash out on their investment, or the company, rather than going, private equity, end up, IPO instead, do you think that's a 2023 conversation, or maybe hold out till 2024 or beyond?
Yeah, that's getting to a level kind of above my expertise, because I don't hope too many companies go IPO. Now, that said, we have done a couple of things. We do see a lot of reverse merger onto the different stock exchanges rather than going IPO. The process of going IPO is expensive and long, and there are companies and firms that will pay good money to help get companies there. The problem is, in the US market, it's really expensive and it's a long time. Well, I've seen more of that happen on the Canadian Stock Exchange. I've been a part of a couple of those from an M&A perspective, where we put a couple of companies, did the reverse merger into a shell company to get it trading. But I would just say, as far as for this audience that is considering maybe, hey, there's a path to it. It is a long path. It is a hard path. And if you thought being a platform company was a challenge, being a public company and a leader of a public company is even a greater challenge. And so there's war stories behind that. And I don't necessarily want to get into those today. But as far as IPO, I do know a company here would Reach Out IT. I don't know if you know them. They're publicly traded MSP. They're looking to do some roll-ups. They're moving through the process as a publicly traded company to get onto the stock exchange and raising funds. And we've been a part of their journey from an M&A perspective. And it's just more challenging than everybody set out to. Now they're doing, I think, overall fairly well. But that said, it is a very complex journey.
Fair enough. Well, at least scratch that surface. So, by the way, guys, we got about 15-ish minutes left. You guys have any questions for Reed on how to position your company to sell, merge, for you to go out and acquire? Just, hey, what's my company worth? It's a good time to ask those questions. Reed's probably seen all sorts of different form, shape, sizes, and this guy's probably been at least privy to some of the behind the scenes information that you wouldn't get on the surface level. So this is the guy that you want to ask. How many times hate to go down this road, how many times did you have to evaluate a company because one of the principals was going through a divorce and they had to value the company in order to finish that?
Yeah, so that happens. Probably a third of our valuations are due to either marital or partner dissolution. And all I can say is if you have partners, make sure you have good buy-sell, good buy-sell agreements, good drag-along, tag-along rights, and then just to make sure that there's clearly defined. In other words, I'm saying get a prenuptial, because I would say it's probably only about 10% of partnerships that I end up seeing actually succeed well over time. Now, that's a good conversation around the merger. We do a lot, doing a lot with that, especially around call rights, put rights. So ways if things don't go well, that you can push people out or people can step out without it killing the business. But we do get pulled into a lot of firms that are like, one guy's trying to grow it, the other guy's just, riding the wave, and the guy growing is like, hey, I'm done dragging you along on this journey. I want out. And to get that individual out is way more expensive than anybody wants. So having, sitting down now, even if you're like, hey, well, no, things are good. I'm like, hey, if things are good, that is the best time to sit down and have the conversation. There's a number of great attorneys that'll work through that and just make sure that in essence, what you want to do is with the call and put rights is if I need to get George out, I'm going to pay George a premium because I'm pushing him out, right? If George says, hey, I want out, Reed, I'm done, I want to go do the MSP initiative, I'm tired of working with you, then, hey, George is going to take a discount for pulling himself out. In either case, you have a clearly defined path so that the firm actually stays healthy through that whole experience and doesn't get either stuck in indecisiveness and eventually slow decay because you have descending partner, not descending, dissension between the partners. But it is about having a clear path for the company to be able to succeed. So definitely sort that out, because trust me, if you can't sell your way out of that problem either, by the way, much people go, well, we'll just sell the business. It becomes a really big challenge even through the sale because people want different values based upon their position. So sort it out ahead of time.
Does that hold true when your partnership is based on just shares of a C corp?
Shares of a C corp is different. Yes,
Yeah.
a C corp is very different than an S corp. But I would say
I just tell them shares are no guarantee of employment. Maybe one day we'll pay a dividend and your contract's over.
Yeah, C corps are definitely different. But I would say in the MSP market, at least that we've seen, I would say less than 5% of MSPs are C corps.
Okay.
Wow, that's an interesting percentage. Too many tax benefits on the other side.
Well, it has to do with scale. Candidly, as you get larger, there's more advantages and reasons to be a C corp. But it's probably pushing 20 million in revenue before you start to get to that place where you go, makes some sense to make those changes. But certainly from a transaction perspective, it's way easier to get. It's way easier to get an S corp or an LLC with an S selection sold.
Yeah, mine was GSA requirements.
Okay. Yep.
And it wasn't cheap. You're right. I mean, just to get certain contracts. Any other reason? The answer was no.
Yeah. No, but and GSA is a great reason for kind of why you have to be in the impetus behind it. So it certainly adds complications to a transaction, and but that said, if you are a C corp, stay a C corp. A lot of people are like, well, I'm going to switch back. Well, okay, as long as you don't sell for 5 years, because there's a 5-year look back on the C corp. So in the end, I would just say stay where you're at. There's ways around it. It does make a more complicated transaction.
Cool. I've never heard it put that way, Reed. It's like a prenup for your business. It's good analogy, I guess. But especially if you have partners, I think you said in a conversation long ago, it's better to have somebody in a higher percentage, position than to have everybody in equal percentages, because then it's impossible to come to a conclusion, kind of thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the challenge with businesses, different. I'm not trying to compare it necessarily to marriages, but hey, when you're in college, you're going, hey, let's just work together, and it's 50-50 or 30-30, we're each going to be a third. It just seems fair, right? And it's not that it's unfair, except for the fact that you've just created a stalemate for any time there's dissension. And it's not like hey, if we're living together, we can just part ways and have everything balance out. No, unfortunately with business, you just can't part ways easily. So as a result, it's best and cleanest, and the best time to have the conversation is when there is no tension. Because once And we see this happen where it's like, yeah, we need to do this. And right, as soon as you put numbers into the equation and everybody starts doing the math in their head, okay, I'm going to make this much, he's going to make that much. Well, I think I should get more than that. It's amazing how fast it unravels. And so it is something that the healthiest time to have the conversations and work through that is when everything is in a good condition, good relationships.
I was in a quick conversation with an MSP last week. I don't know if this is still true. I know you mentioned it, a year or two back. Let's say you're an MSP that, doesn't put people into defined 3-year contracts, 5-year contracts, whatever, but they have very, very long tenured clients, right? 5, 8, 10 years, right? They're on effectively a month to month, can opt out at any time,
right.
But they've just been around for a long time. And MSP just doesn't really churn out customers. Does that hold the same valuation as if somebody went down and just started locking people into everybody has a 3-year contract? Or how does that work today?
Yeah, so two ways, and I'm going to say 2 ways. I don't mean to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but from a valuation perspective and from a transaction perspective, having longer contracts increases the value of the business. That is a true statement. But what's also a really true statement is it takes a long time your sales cycle is much longer trying to get a 3-year or a 5-year contract. The result that I've typically seen is customers tend to like a easy in, easy out. And so you can actually grow your business faster using a 1-year evergreen contract with a, 90 days out type agreement. The reality is the sales cycle is a lot shorter. The result of the sales cycle being shorter means I grow my business faster in the end, which produces more value. Growing your business faster produces more value than having long-term contracts. That there's some complexity to that whole element. That said, it really depends on your value proposition, right? And so we have the more you end up bundling things together, typically the longer people are willing to sign up for. So particularly and I'm not trying to be a big hardware as a service proponent here, but everybody understands because they buy the cell phone. Hey, I'm getting the subscription from AT&T or T-Mobile or whoever. It includes a free phone. Therefore, I already expect that I'm going to get a 2-year or I'm going to have a 3-year contract. That's what happens to get the free phone. So the reason for bringing that up is I know a lot of customers will blend in some element of whether you're doing hardware as a service by providing the firewall that's out there. I mean, Comcast, just kills me. But it's a $90 modem, but I'm going to pay $10 a month for 36 months. But that's just the reality of when you start to blend hardware into the subscription. And so as you guys look at it, blending in a hardware component into it, even if it's not a big component, automatically switches in the consumer's mind of going, oh, well, I guess I'm going to have a long-term contract because it's being thrown into the equation. And as a result, it becomes a pretty easy way to get, 3-year type contracts without an additional big sales lift.
Interesting. Okay. It's good. Basically it's just a little bit of a strategy, right? On how to, figure out how to keep, get people to stick around for a while. And then some people have built their business granularly, right? And it's kind of like a 1950s. Hey, they do a good job. I stick around. Life's good.
Well, never underestimate the pain to change, right? For almost any customer, as you look at if you're an MSP provider, unless you screwed up, they're not leaving. Why? It's too hard to go down the street for somebody who's going to charge, even if it's $10 a user less. It's like you look at the costs of figuring out what's there, getting things remapped, getting stuff moved over, moving subscriptions over. I mean, it's like changing your bank. I mean, it's just painful. You're just not going to pull up and do that because there's just so much stuff tied to that account or to that bank account, or in this case, to you as an MSP. And so to that end, I think most sophisticated buyers, and we see that today in the private equity space, they like to have long contracts. That's helpful. At the same time, most of them realize I can look at your customer churn, and if your customer churn is low, the probability of them up and suddenly leaving, and that, let me caveat that, if your customer churn is low and you're still a top quartile firm, there's almost no concern. If your customer churn is low and your rates are super low, then they're like, okay, we know why people are staying. We can't change it, right? If your typical per user rate is $50, $60 a user, you're going to find it really hard to find a buyer because they're going to go, hey, that's so below market. You should be at the 100, 125, 150, even up to $200 a user type price for a blended service. And so there's a lot of components that come together on that. But again, coming back to it, the customer contract piece is becoming less of a concern because most buyers realize the end user is not leaving unless they're dissatisfied with the service because the pain to change is too great.
Okay.
So if I raise my rates, can I afford a Tesla? No, that's a joke. My serious question is,
You should be running that through the business, man. That's what you need to do.
I do. No, that's an inside
Okay.
joke. George got it. Anyway, do you rate intellectual property separate from the income part? If you own, certain intellectual property like source code for a software that's used in a certain business.
Yeah, so really good. So a couple of things. Most people have intellectual property and they don't realize they have it. The buyer realizes that they have it and they get to buy the business without paying the additional amount for the intellectual property. And so I think it's close to 60% of firms have intellectual property that's undocumented. The biggest things there on intellectual property is documenting it. And the question really comes, how do I document the value of it? And so some of the best ways to be able to do that is if you can go back, you can say, depending on the intellectual property, right? But hey, if I have onboarding processes that are specific for an industry, and I can show that using this onboarding process that we've developed reduces our onboarding time by 20%. Hey, that's a great way to start to quantify the value of that, not only just within your business today, but if the buyer comes and gets it, they're like, hey, we can roll that out across, X number of new opportunities, then hey, there's an increase in value there. Most intellectual property is driving efficiency or driving a value that's harvested either in profitability or increased growth rates. And so you want to be able to really look at those elements to say, hey, because we've built this IP out, we can grow this much faster. We can add this service to all of these other services, or it drives that the efficiency drives up our profitability as a result of it. So the biggest thing on intellectual property is quantifying what it does for you rather than saying, hey, this is a really cool tool that we have, because there's a lot of cool tools out there, but for the seller, quantifying its value is going to be probably the most important thing you do to be able to drive additional value to that. It won't show up as a hey, we paid this amount for the firm and this amount for your intellectual property. It's more more likely the fact of, hey, we're going to pay, rather than a 7 times return, we're going to pay an 8.5 times return to get the firm and the intellectual property.
So mine, which I'm just hogging, but mine gets a specific, I think, pretty substantial lease. It's used to dispatch all the longshoremen on the West Coast.
Okay.
So it has, there's actually a direct income allocation to it.
Okay.
And indirect.
Sweet.
Because we wrap services around it. So I was just wondering if you would do like, here's part A and here's part B.
That we'd have to, so valuing intellectual property is probably one of the most complicated things that we do. And there's just a lot of things that we have to look at from that. But a lot of that is looking, in this case, what's the market opportunity is going to weigh into that factor. What's the, so we had a client that came to us, wanted to buy their intellectual property, and they had a really cool tool that was used for the Michigan snow plowing, road snow plowing, government sector. Well, it's cool intellectual property, but because Michigan does it different than every other state that's out there, they had already captured 100% of their market share. And so the intellectual property had much less value because you couldn't go anywhere, and it was subjected to just what Michigan Department of Transportation wanted to do, right? So I think, there's elements that look like that. When you look at the marketplace along the Northeast, what's the opportunity for that to grow, and how does that play into it? So there's market factors, there's value factors, there's a lot of elements that come into it. I don't have it right off the top of my hand. There is a great book though that talks about how to value intellectual property. and can get you into all of those details.
Perfect. Thank you.
Where do people find you, Reed? How do they get a hold of you, buddy?
Reed, R-E-E-D, not E-A, not E-I, it's E-E-R-E-E-D at itvaluations.com. And you can also go to our website. Otherwise, look for us at IT Nation and the pub crawl.
And the block party.
Block party. It used to be the pub crawl. Now it's the block party. Yeah, there you go.
So well, it all gets mushed into, did you have a good time? It's all good. This session was
Awesome.
recorded. You'll find it at mspinitiative.com. So you can go back, rewind, and listen to what Reed's telling you, or you can pick some questions out and get ready for IT Nation, because I'm sure there's more behind it. You'll find it at mspinitiative.com under sessions. We'll see you again Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Everything's recorded and online after we're done. Reed, appreciate you, buddy. See you in a couple weeks. Everyone else, hope I see you soon too. Catch you on the other side. Have a good one.
All right, go Phillies.
Thank you.